It doesn't matter. You can ask me what you need to ask me.
Right now.
Okay. So if you remember yesterday, we started talking about figurative language. And we said that at the end of all this, we will be able to determine what an author means even when it's not stated literally. So even when they don't say it literally. And our example yesterday was, my mom came in loud versus my mom came in like a herd of elephants. The differences in those words are figurative language. They're both giving us the same meaning, but it's said in a different way. And yesterday we worked on looking at those words like or as to find a simile. Those are kind of our keywords for a simile. Today we're going to continue reading Owl Moon, and we're going to still be listening for those key words. But what I'm going to show you is how to take what we find, because yesterday we did a great job finding those similes. When you went back to your seats, you did a great job finding them, those words like or as. But we're going to take it a step further today, and we're going to try to find what they actually mean. So keep in your mind while I read, listening for those key words. We walked on. I could feel the cold as if someone's icy hand was palmed down on my back, and my nose, and the tops of my cheeks felt cold and hot at the same time. But I never said a word. If you go owling, you have to be quiet and make your own heat. We went into the woods. The shadows were the blackest things I had ever seen. They stained the white snow. My mouth felt furry, for the scarf over it was wet and warm. I didn't ask what kinds of things hide behind black trees in the middle of the night. When you go owling, you have to be brave. Then we came to a clearing in the dark woods. The moon was high above us. It seemed to fit exactly over the center of the clearing, and the snow below it was whiter than the milk in a cereal bowl. I sighed, and Pa held up his hand at the sound. I put my mittens over the scarf, over my mouth, and listened hard. And then Pa called, "Woo!" I listened and looked so hard my ears hurt, and my eyes got cloudy with the cold. Pa raised his face to call out again, but before he could open his mouth, an echo came threading its way through the trees. Woo! Woo! Pa almost smiled. Then he called back, "Woo!" just as if he and the owl were talking about supper, or about the woods, or the moon, or the cold. I took my mitten off the scarf, off my mouth, and I almost smiled too. The owl's call came closer from high up in the trees on the edge of the meadow. Nothing in the meadow moved. All of a sudden, an owl shadow, part of the big tree shadow, lifted off and flew right over us. We watched silently with heat in our mouths, the heat of all those words we had not spoken. The shadow hooted again. Pa turned on his big flashlight and caught the owl just as it was landing on a branch. For 1 minute, 3 minutes, maybe even 100 minutes, we stared at one another. Then the owl punked its great wings and lifted off the branch like a shadow without sound. It flew back into the forest. "Time to go home," Pa said to me. I knew then I could talk. I could even laugh out loud. But I was a shadow as we walked home. warm, or anything but hope. That's what Pa says. The kind of hope that flies on silent wings under a shining owl moon. So I remember hearing a simile in what I read today, and I found it on this page. So I'm going to take my sticky note. Put it here, just like we did yesterday. The simile I heard was, the owl pumped its great wings and lifted off the branch like a shadow without sound. So I'm going to write that on my chart. The author said, and the author meant. Because remember, we're looking for what the author means by using these similes. So what the author said was, then the owl pumped its great wings and lifted off the branch like a shadow without sound. And I know this is a simile because I see a key word in here that I'm going to underline. I see that word like. So I know that it's comparing two things. Because I see that key word in there. We're comparing the owl with a shadow. So an owl and a shadow are two unlike things that the author is using this simile to compare. So I'm going to read it again to try to see what the author meant. Then the owl pumped its great wings and lifted off the branch like a shadow without sound. So this tells me right here, without sound, that he was quiet. But it also tells me that he's got great wings. So when I picture those great wings, I picture really, really big wings. And if the owl was this big, it would seem like usually he would make a lot of sound anywhere he went. Because usually big things tend to make big sound. But the author's trying to tell me that even though he had these huge wings, he wasn't making a sound. He was like a shadow. So a shadow makes no sound. It just kind of follows behind us, right? We've seen shadows behind us when we're walking outside. So he's going real quietly. So even though, so the author meant that even though the owl was huge, he made no sound when he moved. These two statements say the same thing, but one of them is more poetic. One of them just sounds better. And we'll practice putting that in the book on our page. it's important that we know why figurative language is used. There's a reason these authors are making money for being authors. The page says, "Then the owl pumped its great wings and lifted off the branch like a shadow without sound. It flew back into the forest. 'Time to go home,' Pa said to me. I knew then that I could talk. I could even laugh out loud. But I was a shadow as we walked home." So that's how the author wrote it. What he meant was, even though the owl was huge, he made no sound when he moved. It flew back into the forest. 'Time to go home,' Pa said to me. I knew then I could talk. I could even laugh out loud. But I was a shadow as we walked home. I like this one better because it ties that word shadow in to the beginning and the end of this page. So that might be why the author chose to use a simile instead of just saying literally what he meant. Today, when you go back to your seats, remember yesterday, we went back to our seats and we just flagged where those similes were in our books. Today, when we go back to our seats, I want you to read for 10 minutes. And I want you to find a simile in your reading and flag it. I'll give you the Post-its again to flag it. After the timer goes off in 10 minutes, you're going to draw this kind of chart in your reading journal. I want you to write what the author said, so you'll actually copy down your simile, which a lot of you did yesterday. And then I want you to try to think what the author meant. What did he literally mean when he said this simile? If you don't have a simile in your book, I want you to take one of the ones that you came up with yesterday and write what the literal meaning was. But most of your books will have a simile. If you don't find one in what you're reading today, but you found some yesterday, use some of the ones you found yesterday. I would be willing to bet that most of your fiction books have similes in them, though. So make sure you're looking real closely.
I only found one simile yesterday.
If you found one, that's enough. But keep looking today. So today we're starting where we left off yesterday in our fiction books, and we'll keep reading. So you might find a new one today. Eduardo?
In 4th grade, I learned that an owl, when he flies, you can't hear him because his wings make the air go up.
So they're quiet. So you can agree with this. Kelly? Jacob?
What if there is one in your book but you don't even know what it is?
Well, this is just a chance to try. And sometimes looking back at what was said before or looking at what was said after, using those context clues will help you figure out. And this is just trying to decide. It's not a right or wrong. I just want to see you working those muscles in your brain, trying to figure out what the author really meant. Are there any questions about what you'll do when you get back to your seat? All right, table 2 and table 4 may go back to your seat. It's okay.
Wait, did I do it? Oh, like this.
That's fine.
No, wait, no, wait.
Table 1 and 3 may go back to your seat.
It's not broken.
It's fine. It's not broken.
It's still rolling. It's not broken. Go to your seat. It's still rolling.
Go back to your seat.
It's still playing.
Table 6 and 7 may go back to your seat.
How much? Oh, where is it? I read that. This is the list of